Welcome to another amazing episode of Tower Topics. I'm Ryan Sir. With me, as always, is my co host with the most, Don Helbig. We're taking you back to 1982 this time. This is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast for Kings Island fans by Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about.
All right, so very special episode of Tower Topics today. We had a couple guests on last week, but this is somebody that's very near and dear to me. I want to introduce you guys to Mr. Bill Mefford, who has held every communications position known to man in the theme park industry, but most importantly, he was at Kings Island for the initial Winterfest in 1982. Meff, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
We're doing great. So, Bill, take us back to the early planning stages of the first Winterfest at Kings Island in 1982. So, we're talking 41 years ago. So, what
Yeah.
was kind of the inspiration behind the event?
Well, I think it what really came from the executives, the owners of the park, because they wanted a way. This was kind of almost a golden age of Kings Island. It was really rocking, and I think they wanted a way to continue uh, having getting visitors in the park because it was. I can't remember if we did Halloween back then in '82. Do you remember that, Ryan
So
or Don?
Fearfest
I don't.
started in
Did not.
2000.
I think we did. Yeah. Uh, but anyway, they want to, in essence, extend the season. And of course, none of us, when we first heard it, well, I was all for it when I first heard it because just like Christmas time and everything. But nobody knew if it was going to work, really. There really hadn't been anything done like that. It's the Midwest in the winter time, and we're talking about being in a theme park and, you know, doing things in a theme park, riding rides and what have you. So nobody really knew. And honestly, I congratulate the Kings Island staff who, in that year one, set the tone. Uh, they knocked themselves out in the decorations and the way they executed things, and I think they got it off on a real right foot. I think they did a really good job. And there were some dedicated people, let me tell you, back in the day. I'm sure there are today too, but these guys ate, lived, drank, slept Kings Island. They loved Kings Island. It was like a family back then. It really was. And and it showed, I think, in the execution of the product.
Yeah. It was a little bit before I was born, but I would definitely agree. Going out into uncharted territory. Well, let me ask you this: so it's such a significant departure from the traditional summer amusement park experience. Now there's a template for it, but at the time, what were some of the challenges and opportunities that you encountered in marketing and promoting this event, especially with the fact that it was during the winter, less rides open, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was such a big part of it. That was a huge challenge. Nobody knew what it was really. Nobody knew. I mean, I think there was some feeling out there if Kings Island's doing it, it's probably going to be pretty neat, but you don't really know. And the challenge was trying to communicate what it is going to be and what the experience is going to be like with all the lights back then. There's there weren't as many lights as there are now, but for back then there were a lot. And the tower shined like a beacon through the sky for miles. It was pretty neat. And so it was a challenge. We would have weekly meetings. There was a committee, if you would say, that met to say, okay, what are we going to do? What what is it? We have this park. We have to make it into some sort of Christmas time celebration. What are we going to do? And it took the minds and the heart and the work of people from all departments pitching in for this one project to make it successful. And I think they succeeded in that. They succeeded in year one of, I guess, what would become a legacy, although there was Winterfest and then there wasn't Winterfest and there was, then there wasn't, and now there is. So it comes and goes, but I think in essence, the idea was a good one. And for year one, it was executed good too.
Bill, I remember in the first Winterfest, there were some, different like attractions and things to see. One of the things that came to mind or comes to my mind was the model railroad trains and that you had set up that, guests could see. And, when you're thinking about that, were there any specific attractions or features of the 1982 Winterfest that you think set it apart from the other holiday events in the area at the time? Now, there wasn't a ton of them, but there were some things that were going on.
Yeah, I would say one of the things was the huge outdoor ice skating rink, which was the Royal Fountain. And I think that adds a whole anchor atmosphere. Even if you didn't ice skate, I'm not very good at ice skating, but I certainly enjoyed the lights and nighttime and the decorations and watching people skate and having a good time. I think that was an atmosphere anchor attraction that you didn't really have to do it yourself, but it was a great thing to have. I like the crafts too, and they came. It's before Christmas time. You're looking for stuff to buy anyway, and I think we had local crafters and got to know a couple of them, and that was a good thing. And the shows,
And showed, yeah.
the shows were really good.
Yeah, so you mentioned the ice skating, and there's been a couple stories here and there about transforming the fountain into the ice skating. But so talk about other things like the infrastructure of the park, like what they had to do to prepare to accommodate for a winter event, and some of the logistical hurdles involved with that.
Well, there were
Hmm.
tons, and in the ice skating in particular, we did not do that ourselves. We called on the expertise of Willie B. Tech Productions in California. And Willie himself, Willie B. Tech, came in and got a little frustrated because it was about like today
Mm.
outside when he was trying to freeze the water on the Royal Fountain, and he was just having a heck of a time. It's hard to do that when it was that warm. And I can remember we had a very successful media preview, I think, on a Thursday night. A lot of people, but we couldn't freeze the fountain. It was 83 degrees when I started to MC, probably at 5 or 5:30 in the evening. And I had a three-piece wool suit on. I'm sweating to death. It's 83 degrees in November. The day or was that the day before Thanksgiving, maybe, that we had it. Uh, and then it opened, I guess, the day after Thanksgiving. But it was a tremendous media preview. We invited Kings Island people, staff members, and their families because nobody had ever seen it before. This was going to be brand new to everybody, all the families that were involved. And then we asked the media and their families. That was a great thing because now it wasn't just the media that's got to leave their families and go work. It was the media who could take their families with them and enjoy something together. And there were almost 2,000 people in the park that night, and the energy was super high because it was executed so well with all the lights and everything, not skating, but everything else was really good. It was just a super night. Really one of the best media previews I've ever been to, just because the atmosphere, Christmas time, all that. It wasn't real cold. In fact, it wasn't cold enough probably, but it was still festive and really nice.
Yeah, Bill, I remember being at that media event and exactly what you're talking about and having the opportunity to talk to a number of the different media members that I had met from getting started doing the racer rides and that, and they were just in awe of the way the park looked and the things there was to do for them and their family. But what about the public's initial reaction when it officially opened? What was their reaction to it, and was there any skepticism or doubts about its success that you were dealing with?
You know, I think they accepted it well, unless you guys know something I don't. But I think it was well accepted. They, I think the fact that Kings Island's name was behind it, that there were probably some pretty high expectations going in. We were just really coming off our 10th anniversary year when we had done at least five different things. We think we introduced Viking Fury, we opened the Fest House, we launched Winterfest. Don, didn't we turn the racer around
Yes, you
that
did.
year? And what else? Oh, we expanded Hanna-Barbera Land, had Bill Hanna, Joe Barbera out for that to do that. That was a big media event.
Yeah.
We introduced Timberwolf. Think of that. All this, and this is my first year.
Yeah, that
It's
was,
like,
of all the years I went to Kings Island, the 2000 or the 1982 season was probably the most memorable because of what you're talking about. Just so many different things debuted that year.
unbelievable. To do all those things I just mentioned in one year. And like I said, I only had been with the park at that time a couple months. So what an introduction for me. Talk about hitting the
Yeah.
ground running. You didn't have time to think about anything. You just did it.
Now, every time you turned around, there was something else that you were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I remember taking a field trip to Kings Island, it was in the fall time, and I was in about the 6th grade, so it's been a couple decades ago at this point, I'm not gonna reveal how many, and, all we did was the monorail, and they had a bird show in the Timberwolf and stuff like that, and I remember when they initially told us about this, we're like, "Oh, there's no rides open, that's dumb." So, I'm sure that there was that naysayer attitude out there with some, but they probably experienced it and really got won over pretty quickly. So Meth, you mentioned one of your memories. You mentioned it twice, so obviously it sticks with you. Is how warm it was on the media day, and it was like 80 something degrees in November. Are there any other memorable moments with the first Winterfest that kind of stick out to you, or were there any unexpected surprises that kind of stick out to you?
I don't, other than the water not freezing initially, that, eventually it got cold enough outside that the water did freeze and people enjoyed ice skating. But I don't recollect anything certainly on a negative scale that went wrong during Winterfest. Actually, I remember it being just a wonderful event.
Crowded, typically. Mm,
Yeah, yeah. I thought the crowds were good.
mm.
The good. It made money, which is the
Right.
important thing.
Yeah, there was always a crowd there when I went. You had to get there early to get a seat in the Fest House to watch the
That's
shows. But
true, Don.
um, let's talk about some of the unique marketing strategies that you were able to use to attract guests to Winterfest in its inaugural year. So, for you being the PR guy,
Yeah.
how fun was that for you to be able to
Oh
pitch
my
this story?
goodness. That was fun. We had me, Ruth, and Carolyn, I believe, at that time. And we had to go tell the world. We didn't have computers. We had to go call on people, sit down with them face to face, take media kits, which we typed on a typewriter, and took them with us. As I recall, we visited, I'm going to say 41
Mm.
cities between the three of us to get on morning talk shows, noon talk shows, or tape for the evening news, uh, to talk about Winterfest. If a small burg had a daily paper, we were stopping. We were stopping and doing interviews, of course, with the radio station, TV stations, and we just got the word out. And fortunately for us, for that time, there were TV was into a lot of good news or soft news, if you will, shows. So we fit right into their bailiwick. It's not hard news, it's soft news, it's visual for TV, a lot of lights, a lot of people skating, that type of thing. Uh, so we had a lot of film crews that would come in. It seemed like every day from 150-mile circle around Cincinnati, those cities, West Virginia and Dayton and Columbus, even Cleveland, Louisville, Lexington, Parkersburg, Charleston, Huntington, Indianapolis. I mean, we had film crews coming in because we fit right into what they were trying to do. They were looking for good news things to do, and we were lucky enough to be doing what we did at that time. You remember that, Don? We probably wore you out.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was busy. It was busy going, having all those different outlets coming out and,
Yeah,
wanting to talk and, even during the Winterfest time, sometimes you would want that third party endorsement. You guys would say, hey, we're at the station here. Can you talk to them about
yeah.
Winterfest? So, yeah, but I mean, it's, certainly a different age now with, with PR and how you go about it than that, just getting in your car, driving to these outlets, sitting down, talking to them face to face. But yeah, different world.
I remember research came back. We did research on how did you hear about
Mm.
it? And a huge portion said through the advertising. But year one, I don't think we advertised at all. I think it was all PR and people, they see you on TV and it just converts to that's advertising, but it's really it even is during a news segment or a morning show or something like that. But they still relate that to advertising. But that was kind of funny. And I remember the general manager of the park coming up and saying, "This is awesome. Everybody, everybody's saying they're seeing the advertising. We're not doing any advertising. It's PR's getting out there." But it was work. It was 41 cities, and you know, at the same time, though, I love the concept and the execution of it so much that it wasn't like work to me personally. Obviously, I had good news to tell everybody, so sure, it was fun. Uh, but, I don't know if you ask all the people who were wiring things and making the sound and building stuff if they had as much fun as I did, but we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, I learned a lot from you, Carolyn, and Ruth, and I'll admit I stole your playbook when I got into PR
Yeah.
because it worked.
Yeah, well, you are natural. You helped us a lot.
Well,
We got so many national. That was the other thing. There was, besides us, regional media that were looking for stories. They would feed if the story was strong enough and colorful and visual enough, they would feed it to the national media. So we ended up getting tons of national media exposure, and there were national programs on their own that uh, wanted to do stories like this. It was a good time for the theme park business if you knew what they were looking for and how you could fill that need for them.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
Meth, yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned that they saw it in advertising when it was just PR because I think that a lot of people nowadays don't understand the importance of what PR does, especially outside of the backyard market. But neither here nor there. So, my question to you though is, speaking of the '82 Winterfest specifically, so let's talk about that particular run. Um, what do you think that did to contribute to the legacy of Kings Island, and how uh, like the whole industry sees seasonal events in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it had a huge impact, a huge. It would not have had such a huge positive impact if it wasn't executed well. But it was, and I think that had a huge impact on people at Kings Island itself. Whether how can almost right away, how can we improve it for next year? What can we do? Uh, but I think the industry saw it too, and they said, "Wow, we can extend our season if we do a good." wintertime event. Who knew that in the Midwest or the East that a theme park could be open in the wintertime, you know? And I think it set a standard, it set a stage. Back in those days, anyway, back in the early 80s, other theme parks were coming to Kings Island to see what's happening because we were kind of rocking the world with all the stuff that was happening at Kings Island. So other parks would come and tour Kings Island, see what's happening. So I think Winterfest had an impact on them as well.
Well, Bill, let's kind of feed off what you just said there. Winterfest, it went on to become a beloved tradition for many during its first run, and now, in its latest rendition of it. So when you look at all these other parks now doing these winter events, is there a part of you that feels really good because you were part of that first winter event that was in the industry, and now you see everybody doing what you did back then?
No doubt, Don, no doubt. I take a great deal of pride. It took a lot of people, good people, doing a lot of good work to execute what we did. But there's no doubt, it still was year one. And going in, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how people are going to respond or anything. But the fact that we executed it and people seemed happy, I think the research showed that people were pretty happy. Uh, I think it gave us all a really good feeling.
Yeah. So, Meth, okay, let's break this down as far as possible. Um, the initial run of Winterfest, 82, if you had to attribute one word to its success, what would that word be?
Wow. Maybe wow.
Hey, wow was a
uh,
good word for it. It took an
oh,
incredible effort from all parties involved. So, wow.
uh, I atmosphere, I guess,
Mm,
holidays. Uh, by the way, I think one of the reasons that it was pretty successful was the pricing. I think, and it goes back many years, and I might be wrong, and you guys might be able to straighten me out, but I think that first year it was like, I don't know, 325 or 395 or something
mhm.
like that to get into Winterfest. So it was obviously reasonably priced. And I'm also thinking, and I could be wrong about this, I think it might have been free to season pass holders that first year. Now, you know, that was one way to build traffic right away is give it free to season pass holders.
Yeah, it was free. We still had to pay for parking back then. There wasn't a parking pass for pass holders, but yeah, but it was
Right.
still, for me to bring some friends in that with me, for them, a little over $3 to go. It
Yeah.
was just a great night in December.
And I think one of the goals of it, and I think it was executed successfully, was to use this to renew season passes. Season pass holders could come up and were encouraged for a very good price to renew their season passes for the upcoming year. And I think that was a successful
Yeah,
program.
$29.99 or $29.95 was the price. I remember in '82 to renew for '83, which was a great deal.
It's
Yeah.
always been a good deal.
I think, Don, and you may remember, I think that was the only time we allowed season pass holders in free was the first year.
Yeah, then it became
I
a
believe.
little bit. Yeah, you had to pay a little bit the next years to go in, but not what the gate price was.
You know, but that was good. I mean, you want to build a how mad can you be at a product, and if it's free. Uh, so we offered to all that big season pass
Yeah,
base
free came back
free.
again in the mid '80s. After you had left, and that it came back again, circled back around. But even at $3, it was just a
Yeah,
great night of entertainment.
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Well,
yeah.
fantastic information. Very interesting. Meth, thank you so much for sharing your insights. You gonna come back on sometime again?
Oh, I'd love to. It'd be
Awesome.
fun. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Moving on to this episode's listener question, it comes from Donnie. He says, "What would you like to see Kings Island do with Action Zone? It seems so lifeless and empty next to Adventure Port." Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Um, DC Comics. No, I think that's definitely on the horizon if everything goes through the way they think it's going to go through. I think that the biggest problem with Action Zone is that it's a big slab of concrete and it desperately needs trees. Um, I have a vision for some reason where they, as opposed to having the slab, they would have paths and they'd have like evergreen trees in there because that would be really good for Winterfest and stuff like that. Um, but you're right. Like there isn't a lot of conciseness with Action Zone now. Except, did you realize that in Action Zone, every single coaster is below the track? There's a suspended and two inverteds. You ever thought about that?
Yeah,
Isn't that weird?
yeah. But I mean, Donnie's right. I mean, it does need a facelift there. I think it got highlighted by just the tremendous job they did with Adventure Port. The theming there, and then you go from that area and you're walking into Action Zone. Concrete Village, like you kind of described, and it's always kind of been that way. I mean, when they had Oktoberfest, it kind of went around a little bit. You had King Cobra, you had the Wild Animal Habitat,
Yeah.
you had Screaming Demon, and that was about it. But Screaming Demon at least had like the water and stuff around it, so it kind of gave a little bit of a theme in that. But yeah, it definitely needs a facelift. Um, I think what you said should the merger if it closes and that. There's a lot of opportunity there with some of the IPs that they would have to work with to give it that fresh new look.
I agree. And the thing you got to remember is that um the square footage of Adventure Port is nothing compared to Action Zone. So it's not like they can do that on an off year. We're talking about adding tens of $1 million to the budget for whatever they're doing to add. I mean, even if they just landscape it or whatever, that's major construction, tearing up concrete
Yeah,
and
to me, you got to rip up the concrete. You got to put in, kind of make it look like Coney Mall,
mm,
where you've got that kind of, look and feel to it. But thanks for the question, Donnie. And if you have a question, go to our Tower Topics X. There is a pin post at the top, and just submit your question, and we'll be happy to answer it for you.
awesome.
So that wraps up another episode of Tower
All right,
Topics. Thanks for
I'm
joining
Ryan
us.
Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.